Hello from Bloomington. I'm Heidi Kessner, Dean of the Kelley School of Business. I want to thank you for participating in this important roundtable discussion. Wherever you are in the world, the pandemic has been and continues to be challenging on many levels. Many are experiencing stress and heartache from losing family and friends. In addition, the pandemic has disrupted our everyday lives and livelihoods on a global scale. And of course, there are ample uncertainties going forward. I think we can all agree we still have very challenging paths to navigate, paths that require short-term and long-term solutions. As we look forward to recovery, it's imperative that we share ideas, insights, and best practices so we can lift each other up and press ahead on solid footing. We'll have to be nimble as well, opening ourselves up to new ideas and visions wherever they may take us. The pandemic has certainly shown us just how interconnected we are. We are truly all in this together, and we will recover together. I urge you to keep the conversation going long after this roundtable program ends. Thank you again for participating, and please stay healthy and safe.
Welcome to the Indiana University Kelley School of Business's Worldwide Roundtable Discussion. I'm not exactly sure if my camera is working, so if it isn't, I apologize. My name is Levon Schlegel, and I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for International Business, or IIB as we're more casually known. I would like to thank Dean Kessner for kicking our second set of roundtables in our 10th anniversary celebration programming. And thank all of you for joining us as we begin the third of our 5 global panels today. During these 2 days, we have distinguished speakers in Sub-Saharan Africa, Mexico and Latin America, the Middle East, North Africa, China, and the US, all gathering to tackle a topic that is on everyone's mind, the economic recovery post-pandemic. You are among the almost 800 registrants to these 5 events, and as you can imagine, it took a global team to put it together. I would like to thank Jen Goyens and Allison DeWitt of the Kelley School of Business Alumni Association, Roy Hooper for the IU Alumni Association, Ali Batten, Director of the IU Global Gateways, Stephen Yin, Director of the IU China Gateway, Kelley Marketing Team, Zach Watts and Brian Boucher from Kelley Learning Media Team. And finally, I would like to thank Tim Smith from IIB, without whom this project would not have happened. You'll meet Tim at the end of the program during the Q&A session. I ask that if you do have questions throughout the program that you use the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen to share those. The last year has been unprecedented in our lifetime. The COVID-19 virus has forced all of us to redefine how we work, how we communicate, and even how we buy groceries. Individually, our worlds have gotten so much smaller, and with that, our purchasing behaviors have changed dramatically. From hoarding essential items to not participating in the local economies of our cities, our relationship with the global economy has changed regardless of where we are in the world. Unemployment is high, supply chains are challenged, transportation and logistics have had to redefine the way they deliver products and services. We have asked our panel to explore what this means. How do we kickstart our local, regional, and world economies to return to some level of normal? And in parallel to regenerating what we had, we need to ask, what did we learn so we're prepared for next time? And maybe even most importantly, what are the good ideas that emerged from this massive macro disruption that we need to continue? Not a small topic. That said, our moderator and panel for the day are more than up for the task. It is my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Ben Kwan. Starting as an engineer at Cisco Systems in the Silicon Valley back in the late 90s, Ben designed and developed platforms now commonly known as e-commerce, web analytics, and business intelligence. After graduating from the Kelley MBA program in the early 2000s, he spent the next decade in Shanghai exploring his entrepreneurial interests, ranging from corporate M&A to helping Google launch DoubleClick in China to leading corporate development for China's largest mobile ad network. In the early 2010s, Ben relocated to Zurich, Switzerland to take on the role of Managing Director of Digital and Technology Investments at Group M, a WPP company, where he managed investments for clients such as Audi, Coca-Cola, and Credit Suisse. In 2020, our moderator, Mr. Kwan, has taken on his next challenge as the CEO of Media Brands, an IPG company, where he now leads both Hong Kong and Taiwan. He is an international industry speaker, invited by companies like Facebook and Salesforce. He has shared his market insights with audiences in London, New York, and Hong Kong. And in addition, Ben is proficient in 5 languages, including Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, German, and English. Ben, welcome, and thank you for moderating today's distinguished panel.
Thank you so much, Levon, and really appreciate the opportunity. And thank you to the Kelley School for giving us this platform for us to actually share some of the topics that actually we're planning to cover today. As part of this panel, we're very excited to actually have representatives from multiple aspects of the industry, ranging from investments to technology, as well as actually retail, as well as marketing. And with that, I'd like to actually introduce you the 3 other panelists that's joining me in this session to actually really cover the various topics that we've planned today. First, I would like to introduce Yipeng Yang. Yipeng is actually the Senior Director of Business Development for Asia Pacific at Golden Gate Global, an asset investment fund. Ms. Yan oversees business development across Asia Pacific and manages investors in markets including China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, South Korea, Taiwan, and Cambodia. And prior to GGG, she was in investor relationships at the Blueshirt Group in San Francisco, the largest investor relationship agency in the West Coast. And while at the Blueshirt Group, Ms. Yan specialized in investor relation services for publicly traded companies, pre and post IPO companies in both the US and China. She earned her bachelor's degree in economics from Indiana University and has a master's degree in investor relations from the University of San Francisco. So welcome, Yipeng. Next, we have also Ray Wang. He's the co-founder of Midao Technology in Beijing, a gaming content company from which he has grown over 400,000 followers. Midao Technology has garnered quite a bit of industry attention in global industry events such as Gamescom in Germany, Taipei Game Show in Taiwan, Bit Summit in Japan, and WePlay in China. After receiving his bachelor's degree in finance from Indiana University, Kelley School of Business, he returned to Beijing to start his career in the financial industry before co-founding Midao Technology. And more importantly, Ray was named Forbes China's 30 Under 30 list in 2019 and is a member of the G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance in China. So welcome, Ray. Last up, but not least, we have David Chan. David Chan is a 2004 MBA graduate from the Kelley School of Business. After earning his MBA, he worked for Greater China for over 14 years. And in the retail industry, David has successfully consulted and led global retail companies through high sales growth and strategic transformations. His functional expertise includes merchandising, supply chain, and B2C e-commerce. Currently, David serves as a global vice president for merchandising and planning for duty-free shop DFS Group, a LVMH company based in Hong Kong. And during his 9 years at DFS, he has led the fashion and consumables categories through a large global expansion project in Hainan, China, Macau, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Italy. And prior to DFS, David also worked at Levi Strauss & Company in Greater China, Deloitte Consulting, as well as Colt Solomon's Brothers Associates. So first of all, welcome, everybody to this particular panel. I think we have, really been discussing a lot in our own previous discussions around, the dynamics of China and its global trade. I think it's important to also put in the context that, in the 5,000-year history of China, right, the word China in Chinese is 中国, right, representing really this middle kingdom. And what we're seeing is that this global trade has actually centered around, this part of the world. And it's fascinating to see that now in modern day, it still continues to be, play in that particular field. But obviously in the backdrop of the pandemic, I want to just maybe ask all of you, right, to see how has actually, this past 12 months really been impacting your respective markets and your respective industries? And more importantly, what are some of the macroeconomic implications that you've witnessed? And how do you believe these changes will impact the recovery efforts in your respective areas? Let me give this first question off to Yipeng, who looks at this more from an investment perspective. Yipeng?
Hello, Ben. Hello, everyone. Well, yes, definitely a lot of changes and impact in our business. We do international investments and we help our investors to invest in different countries, mostly in the US, but also in some Asia countries like Japan. We do both short-term and long-term investment. We have more than 1,300 investors in mainland China. So you can imagine how much of the impact is for us because of the pandemic. So when the whole world is on pause, most of our business was certainly stopped as well. Our operation in China. However, I do believe that now with the vaccine becomes available in a lot of the countries, our core business will certainly go back to normal as well. So even during the pandemic in 2020, we have been working very closely with our investors, even though they kind of lose their confidence in the investment industry, but still, we do believe that when the pandemic is past, and the whole world will go back to normal, and then our investment opportunities will represent themselves as well for our investors.
Got it. Thank you, Yipeng. One of the elements that you were really kind of talking about is investing in, more important context, kind of also trade, right? And actually, this is very important actually of how globalization and, more importantly, the modern economics really are driving the future. Dave, in your view, when the retail sector, which actually has a lot to do with supply chains, and most notably in the last couple of days, we've seen just a physical ship, right, getting stuck in a canal, seemingly innocuous as that headline, has disrupted 10% of global trade. From your view, how has the last couple of months and last year kind of played out in your industry?
Hey, Ben. Hey, everybody. Greetings from Hong Kong. Good question, Ben. Definitely, actually, with the start of COVID and the pandemic last year, there was already an immediate impact to supply chains around the world, in particular in retail. So working for DFS Group, duty-free shops, we are a big global retailer. We operate Galleria, large format Galleria stores and airport stores all around the world, Europe, Asia, Oceania, and even in North America. And so we procure our products, whether it be beauty products, liquor, tobacco, fashion, watches and jewelry from all around the world, centralizing it in Asia and in America. So actually, the Suez Canal has definitely made global headlines, and it's definitely it has definitely impacted us. I can tell you, we actually have shipments on that vessel that is stuck in itself. So it's slowing things down. Our shipments from Europe to Asia. But going back to my earlier point, even in COVID, with lockdowns and shutdowns all across Europe, in the UK. As well, and even in America, it has affected our supply chains. It has taken much longer to move product around the world. In addition, actually with all the pretty much the global stop in travel, right? A lot of commercial flights have been canceled. There are staggering numbers, as much as high as 90% of commercial flights have been canceled in the past year, and actually a lot of cargo is a big part of it relies on commercial flights. So with less commercial flights, it's been again slower to get product around the world and actually more expensive. So these are actually sort of the hidden impacts of the pandemic on the global supply chains and on retailing.
Interesting. From my industry, actually in marketing, as well as actually in the agency side of the industry, a lot of our clients have recently talked about how, not only the pandemic has actually changed the way that they've actually been thinking about doing business, right? Or kind of in the short term, but more fundamentally, how they should be reimagining their own business, right? With regards to how to deliver the product of goods either in a physical form or actually in an electronic form. And I think it actually goes without saying that we've all gone through a very much a digital transformation, and on a consumer, this experience on a consumer level. Now, that's a little bit what I see, but I wanted to actually kind of toss it over to Ray as well. Really a technologist's heart, really starting at a startup, right, in this period of time. Ray, how do you see kind of this pandemic play out with regards to actually technology usage, and also, how it's actually impacted the industry from where you stand?
Okay. Hi guys. For me, I think because I'm making games in the game industry. For me, the video games have been around for decades and providing entertainment for the children and adults alike. They have evolved significantly from the days of computer games. I'm optimistic about in this industry. I think gaming market will grow steadily in the next 12 months or a year, because for some people, game has become part of their life. There will be more artificial intelligence in the game. I think they might play a role and study your behavior and response to your behavior in the game. I think video game creation has become increasingly complex, and the cost of creating a game is increased every year. It was once unthinkable to spend millions into development costs, but games today, especially after the pandemic, it will cost probably tens and even hundreds of millions. And this has pushed game development into Hollywood movie territory in terms of production and marketing costs. And for the next 12 months, you might play some console games on cloud in anywhere in any device due to the development of 5G technology. Non-traditional gaming companies like Facebook and Google are getting into this industry, and the tech industry is looking for ways to make video game streaming as natural as streaming a song on Spotify or a movie on Netflix. And for now, the Microsoft has already been in the game industry through its popular Xbox console, launched the project xCloud.
Got it. Thanks, Ray. You're really kind of opening up to all of you as well. I mean, a lot of the topics that we've been going through in the last 12 months has really kind of obviously adjusted everybody's perspective. What is the new normal? Out of curiosity, what do you guys think? Is this going to be permanent? Or is this, what do you think that new normal is going to look like? Maybe I hand it back to you, Dave, for your perspective.
Great question. Being in the duty-free travel retail business, it means we are very, very dependent on travelers. So this pandemic has had a tremendous impact on our business. We definitely rely on travelers from China, Japan, Korea, Americans, Latin Americans, Europeans, all over the world. We definitely rely on them to travel to to all of our wonderful destinations and airports. That's a great question. We are all in our travel industry scratching our heads. What's the impact here? I think for the consensus in general is that there is definitely going to be a pretty big impact for the short term. We do see the next 2 years at least that tourist traveling won't recover back to pre-COVID levels. And the minimum is 2. Probably more like 3 to 4. A lot of things need to happen in between for the same level of traveling to happen. You need people to take their vaccines. You need people to feel comfortable. You need flights to come back on schedule. You need borders to open up. All those things have to happen in between. But the question is this permanent? We feel it's not, because the world is a big enough place that there's always going to be a human need for travel, to go somewhere exotic, to see a different country, experience a different culture, walk the streets of Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam. There's something about that just cannot be ever replaced by anything. So we do believe that travel will come back, because we believe as humans, as people, We want to see, we want to see, smell, taste different things.
Well said. Thanks, Dave. You come from an investment perspective. Do you see that there's going to be more, permanent change in investment strategies from some of the folks that you're actually dealing with?
Actually, I don't think the impact is permanent. I mean, like in short terms, yes, our investors, they need to regain their confidence for the economy of the entire world, right? But the needs of investors, true investors, they're always seeking for the best opportunities, either in China or in other countries, and they won't just be satisfied by what they can get from the market here, but they need to have more opportunities all over the world. So I think in short term, because of the travel is banned in most of the countries, so investor cannot really get out. But once this is lifted, things will go back to normal slowly, I think.
Thank you so much. Just sharing also kind of what I've seen with our client portfolio. In the near term, obviously 2020 was a bit of a shock for everybody, right? In terms of investments, everybody said, I need to actually have more data before I decide how do I actually reinvest for that next, right? And what the conversations in just the last few months have been for the clients that I'm working with is really focus on actually building that new infrastructure, okay, to set them up for the next. Because a lot of times technology investments has kind of been downplayed in the overall context of certain businesses, right? And in that sense, what is actually happening is a lot of attention and refocus has been in terms of delivering new user experiences to consumers. Definitely, I think echoing what Dave has said, for travel definitely will not change. People do still want to experience the world. But what's also happening for many of our clients who are actually in physical goods delivery, they're saying, how can I augment that experience virtually? How can I actually deliver that experience without the movement of peoples, right? So that it gives everybody a choice. And so I think it's very interesting is that permanent aspect, I agree with you guys, it's not going to be permanent per se, that where we are today is not going to play out. But what the permanence aspect is that it's the impact in the new way of thinking is going to be permanent. And that the embrace of technologies in terms of what we collectively want to experience, right, we'll have many more outlets for this. And I think earlier Ray was actually talking about the impact of artificial intelligence in the gaming industry as maybe recommendation engines and really providing better discovery of content. Now, I wanted to ask maybe Ray and start off on this next segment is that in terms of actually what we've seen in the last 12 months, digital acceleration is undeniable, okay? The transformation of every business is undergoing through driven by technologies. And some would say that in the last 12 months, we've seen more digital acceleration than we've seen in the last 20 years. And if we look forward, maybe 10 years of planned digital acceptance and transformation was compressed into 9 months, right? So with that said, Ray, maybe could you actually share your perspective on how maybe the digitization or technology has influenced not only your consumers, but also consumers in China?
Yeah, of course. The influence of technology, I think, has reshaped our lives, especially in China. The influence of technology have greatly affected the agriculture, the transportation, and the communication sectors in China. For example, automatic machines have replaced an ancient farming system, such as work animals and manual labor. This has resulted in more automatically highly efficient farm practices, producing more food for more people. For the vehicles, for the transportation part, the electric vehicles are anywhere, everywhere in China, which is friendly to the environment, and people spend less money on electricity instead of oil. For the ride-sharing apps such as Didi is like Uber in the US, which has made it incredibly easy to get to a destination very quickly and inexpensively. For the communication, I think communication is a crucial part of advanced society. We have WeChat. It's an app like you can chat, you can have a conversation through this chat, and this chat could allow you to share your daily life moments easily. And apps like WeChat makes it possible for working from home by using video calls and conference calls via the internet. And I think this technology has shaped our lives, especially in China.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, thanks, Ray. No, I think it's quite interesting because what you're describing is essentially using technology to not only communicate, right, with consumers and actually giving more channels, but also technology in terms of actually now it's coming back into a very physical form, right, to actually really deliver a different set of experiences. Kind of centering around the communications and maybe kind of delivery of products and goods, right? Dave, in the retail experience that you deal with, right? How have you seen kind of technology, take hold, in terms of actually its delivery of experiences in your line of work?
Sure. Well, DFS is a pretty traditional retailer, right? Pre-COVID, we are pretty much a brick and mortar retailer relying on customers to come into our store to shop. But actually pre-COVID, we did start to make some investments in technology, investments such as in apps, partnering with applications that allow customers to click and collect before they fly. For example, in the United States, we just partnered with a company called Inflighter, in which it's pretty cool. Before you go to the airport, you can go on this app, enter in your flight number, and then you can see which products you can buy, and the product will be waiting for you at the gate. So we were starting those partnerships pre-COVID, but COVID has definitely accelerated it. When you have a near global shutdown of all your stores, as a retailer, you've got to find ways to raise revenue and turn your inventory into cash. And one of the most fascinating things that we were forced to do was get into live streaming. And I can tell you, it is a huge hit in China if you haven't read about it already. So I give a lot of credit to our stores in Hong Kong and Macau that immediately shifted their selling to online. So they were doing live streaming broadcasting in the Hong Kong and Macau stores of beauty products, fashion products, watches and jewelry products. Our sales staff were pretty much, doing it online. They were demonstrating products, and it was really exciting. And it was a huge success. So many of our customers in China got online, saw the products, they were impressed with the live stream, and we were able to generate a lot of sales that way. So it's pretty amazing. Sometimes, as they say, I think the saying is, innovation comes out of necessity. And it was a great innovation. And it's something that we're going to continue to do that actually probably will be here to stay.
I think that's actually a really interesting point. I mean, for those in the audience who actually are not familiar with this aspect of actually live streaming, it's taking this idea of actually influencers and making it even further more personal, right? Because if you're activating, from a retail outlet perspective, your sales staff who might not be able to actually, sell in person, you're basically using technology to actually hyper, target the list that they have. And so those who are already buying from individuals, already accustomed to at the store, they still are able to reach their own micro audiences and in turn convert that into sales. And we see that in also in our industry, in our clientele, that this is a very effective tool. And perhaps it actually really changes the way that we advertise. I know, if we look at kind of in the historical sense, this might be kind of what we see as a HTTC, or kind of your QVC of the day, but it's just kind of iterated through in a different form. But it's still proving that fundamentally humans react to personalized messages. Humans react to really this understanding of themselves, and that's really what this whole entire environment has kind of driven to us. Now, stepping back from this micro level, maybe going back in the broader sense, to Yipeng, from a technology perspective, how has that played into your investor psyche? How has that kind of become is it top of mind for the conversations that you have?
I was gonna say that unfortunately for the products and the service we offer, we won't be able to do it online, live streaming, our properties or investment opportunities in the US to investors here in China. But one thing I noticed here is that after even now, the pandemic make, technology is used everywhere actually. So in the past, the major hospitals in China, especially in first tier cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and if you want to make an appointment, you have to actually go to the hospital. But right now they all have their own apps available. So, for anyone who needs to, either renew their prescriptions or make doctor appointments, you can actually very easily to do it on your phone. So I think that's a big change for individuals here, especially, now the pandemic is still around and people tend to avoid actually going to the hospital. Another thing is, so our company, our shareholders, the average age of our shareholders are like 60. So in the past, they all tend to, avoid all conference calls or, video calls. But during the pandemic, that's a must too for all of our shareholders. And you can see is like sometimes it's very funny that, they all, dressed up and put camera on and have their assistants to have everything set up just to talk and to meet with clients over here. So I think that's a good change.
Indeed, that's great. Now I'm going to stay with you for a moment, Yipeng. Really, kind of as we look at into the future, okay, and really kind of look at now that we're sitting at the cusp of the first of Q1 of 2021. What do you see in the horizon in the next 12 to 18 months, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. Due to the nature of our business, travel is very important, not only for our clients, but also for the colleagues in our company. So I really hope and I believe now with the vaccine is almost available everywhere, things will go to better, and we will be able to travel around all over the world. So once that happens, it'll definitely help our investors regain their confidence in the market and be able to actually see what they can invest into. So in the next 12 months, I truly believe, I truly hope that if travel becomes available, our business will go back to normal. The needs of the investor is still there. It's very strong. We can definitely sense it here in China.
Thanks, Yipeng. So it sounds like there's actually really a lot of pent up demand. So they're basically saying, hey, I have investment funds that I don't know where to route to. So this is actually quite positive with regards to, not only for, corporate world, but also maybe for startup worlds. So Ray, you might actually see that there might be some pent up dollars heading your way to fuel additional startups. So how do you see from where you stand that the future in the next 12 to 18 months?
I think the pandemic might be the influence of the pandemic might be less, and I think probably there will be more investors to looking for the companies to invest, and I think it will become better in 12 months.
Got it. And from if they're from a startup perspective, right? Any hints as to where you would think about investing from where you stand?
For investing?
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of technology. So if you were to say, hey, let me give you some advice, Yipeng, for your portfolio of clients, like where do you think you would actually want to invest those dollars?
Yeah, I think the big data, the AI might be good industry to invest. Big data, cloud, yeah.
So a lot of infrastructural topics. And I mean, you've mentioned 5G as well. So this is clearly a next generation infrastructure that's going to be able to deliver a whole new set of experiences, into the future. From my industry and actually from the clients that I've talked to, the next 12 and 18 months is going to be very pivotal because, as at the onset, we are seeing obviously the vaccines playing out with regards to actually its adoption and actually its disbursement, but also everybody's putting a lot of dollars in behind building that next, right? And they were trying to solve problems such as an O2O, meaning offline to online relationship, especially the physical versus the virtual world. Another area of obviously is to continue to iterate the e-commerce space, but more specifically to figure out how to deliver the product almost instantaneously. I mean, clearly, I think Amazon in a global sense has actually done that well, but also the local players in China has almost, deliver product within 2 to 3 hours time. That's almost as if before you can think of what you want, it's already at your doorstep. So this kind of expectation and consumerism is playing out. And from a marketing perspective, this is almost an area that is now an expectation for consumers, right? And they're saying, hey, look, I want it before I know about it, and it has to land in my hands pretty much instantaneously. So there's still a lot to work to be done in this space. Dave, from where you sit, next 12 to 18 months, how is it going to look for you guys?
Actually, let me first start off by saying I can definitely echo what Ray said earlier. AI, artificial intelligence, is huge. In our company, it is the #1 initiative, and actually the biggest thing that we are investing in. As a big global retailer, we actually have tons of data, tons from all of our stores around the world. We know who from what country bought what in what country and what airport and what flight they took. There's a lot of data in our company. We're actually investing in that heavily. So that's and we're going to use that to help with our sourcing, with our pricing, to optimize the business. But to answer the question at hand about the market in the next 12 months, I think what you're going to see in our industry is definitely there's pent-up demand, and we see that in countries where we operate that have travel bubbles. The best example is like Macau and Hainan. So in Macau, it is one of the few places on the planet where mainland Chinese can go to without quarantine. They just have to show that they are COVID free. And our business in Macau is, I tell you, it's doing amazing. Actually, it's on a run rate for record sales. And who would have thought that, in a pandemic? And so again, it validates my first point about people love to travel. People love to go places and see things and experience things. And so, even in America, in the 3 airports that we operate, of course, the international passengers are down significantly, but domestic travel is picking up. So that's very encouraging as the vaccines start to get rolled out pretty quickly. In the United States, you're starting to see the confidence in flying. So, and our business is slowly picking up there. So I think in the next 12 months, whenever you see a travel bubble being formed, be it, I don't know, Hong Kong and Singapore, we're keeping our fingers crossed for that, or with Japan, or with Australia, I think you're going to see, all this pent up demand that everyone's talking about.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. In that context, I mean, as I reflect on all of your respective responses, it's quite an optimistic outlook, right? In that next 12 to 18 months, and there's still a lot to look forward to. If we kind of look at it from sustaining that optimism, right? Are there any things that we need to really kind of keep in mind and implement to make sure that these growth opportunities are sustained and not distracted by this kind of desire to return to, you could say, that the pre-2000 normal, right? So, Dave, continue on with you. How do you see that in your industry?
Let me try to rephrase that. You're saying like we're seeing pent-up demand, and how do we make that sustainable?
Yes, that's right.
In our industry, we're actually we can't wait for people to travel and spend again. I think I think it will be sustainable. That's a interesting way to look at it. I think again, the perspective is that what we've seen is in some of the travel bubbles that are out there, that the demand is huge. And I think that if you kind of can visualize the world and all the different countries and places as bubbles slowly start to get rolled out, I think that in itself would kind of naturally, it'll just kind of naturally phase back in all the travel. If you know what I mean. I mean, we anticipate Asia would probably lead the way. It's Asia from a COVID standpoint has been a little bit better, let's just say, than what we see in Europe. But however, in America, we are seeing the vaccines being rolled out really quickly. So we see Asia bubbles happening first, and then we'll see a lot of the travel within Asia happening, and then I think the Americas next, and then I think Europe. That's kind of generally the consensus. So I think if you see kind of the way things being phased out, it'll just naturally, I think, roll out.
No, thanks for that. I think, Dave, what my earlier question was really more centered around is that, are there any actions that actually companies should be taking, right, to kind of make sure that we still kind of are returning back to growth and not become complacent, right, to where we are, right? And so apologies if my question was not clear. No, what we recommend for a lot of our clients is actually to say this is the time to invest in heavy infrastructure. That infrastructure that we know certain trends and behaviors that will come, right? Obviously, each market has its own different dynamics. For example, Taiwan, one of the markets that I oversee, actually of 25 million people, the pandemic has not hit. They've been really on its bubble. And so in markets like that, we're basically saying, hey, you should actually take advantage of this opportunity that you have a luxury of not being impacted to really think about how to put those infrastructural elements in so that you can actually help amplify your value across the globe, right? I'm sitting in a quarantine hotel in Hong Kong, as you guys may know, and in here in Hong Kong, in this particular market, I see that there's a lot of burgeoning kind of pent up also demand with regards to actually, I'm anxious to actually go out and actually tackle the world, right? And obviously, it's a byproduct of the fact that Hong Kong is a very international city unto itself and has a very keen, eye towards global trade. So, folks are actually very interested in saying, how do I, deliver these, experiences and also help bring that to, different parts of the world as they're coming out of, kind of the travel restrictions. And so this is a very common theme that I'm seeing in my industry. Maybe Yipeng from the investment side as well, how do you, keep, your investors really kind of excited to invest in for growth into that future?
Oh, we're still learning that. So I think one thing we have been doing really well during the pandemic is that, as a company, we don't go silent. I mean, during the worst time of the pandemic in 2020, a lot of investors, they lose their confidence in anything, in the products they already invested or in the, products we actually have been, doing due diligence for them for over a couple of years. Because the whole world is, stopped. There's no one's working. Everywhere is closed. So they panic, but it's normal. So what we have been doing, what I have been doing here is that we very proactively to reach out to all of our investors to let them know what's happening. So a lot of time it's just because they don't know, and then they got scared and they don't want to be working with you anymore, and that's the worst thing we want to see. So I think one thing is we're still learning because it's a process, and I don't know what's gonna happen next couple months, and maybe things will go better or go worse. I really hope it won't. But I think one thing is that being part of a company, and especially for what we do, we work with investors in individuals. So important thing is that we always keep in contact. We let them know what's happening, give them the truth, make them be comfortable of what's happening over here and in the US.
Brilliant. No, thanks, Yipeng. I think even from an investor perspective, I can imagine that the number one indicator that they actually can be more aggressive is return on their investment. So when when travel restrictions open up and actually when consumerism continues to take hold and they see the return on that investment, I'm sure they'll be opening up more wallets. Ray, you deal with a bit of the virtual economy, right? And kind of this electronic type of economy, and consumerism actually, and usage of your, applications and games, it's been growing, right? So how do you think about sustaining that future?
Yeah, I think that is a tough question. I think from the side of entrepreneur, I think the important thing to remain optimistic is to set some milestones for a business. When you accomplish each of the milestones, and you will feel satisfied when you get a growth opportunity, and you will be motivated to put yourself to focus on accomplishing the next milestone. And another thing I think to keep you feel like optimistic is setting up deadline for each of your small project. And I think for students who study in IU, they must be very familiar with this. And tell your boss or client that you will give them a draft at the end of the day, and then you will find the magic of the deadline. We know that. And the most powerful tool in human history to increase your productivity and to help you to stay focused.
That's great.
Yeah, for the entrepreneurs.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's great, Ray. And I think in context of actually that last point about its relationship to also our IU students, I wanted to actually kind of ask the last question for our session, right? Understanding that actually our audience is going to have a lot of our IU colleagues and alums or actually students in the school. I wanted to ask as the last parting question, given now what you know now, right, and your collective experience to go international, really kind of doing global business, are there any tips and advice that you could have for our students as to how to pursue a career similar to yours? Maybe Dave, I'll start with you because I understand you're from Boston originally, making all the way out to Asia and spending so much time out there. What advice do you have to our students?
Yeah, I think building an international career is the long-term process, which can bring you many great experiences, benefits, and personal satisfaction. However, it also demands a lot of work to do. The first recommendation I think is, for me, I think is probably starting as early as possible. The sooner you start preparing for an international career, and the sooner you will get a good position. It is always good to attend international courses and discover the business climate in the target country. Additionally, I think applying for an internship probably is quite, especially abroad, is quite helpful. And the second one, I think, probably build your network. Expand the network is extremely important, especially for students in Cali. And when you are trying to build an international career, because local contacts can recommend you to their clients or business partners abroad, I think. And stay open-minded and trying to develop your communication skills. It will help you to grow the professional network. The last recommendation, I think, probably is doing a lot of research as much as possible. Before you choose to work internationally, and you should doing a lot of research on the local market and learn about its characteristics. Try to avoid industries with the highly competition and think about your comparative advantage and what kind of expertise you can deliver to the potential employers. And if you can differentiate from others in some way, and that will make you valuable in the international environment, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ray.
Yeah,
Dave,
thanks.
over to you.
Yeah, I think those are all great tips from Ray. I think I would say just building on top of that, one of the things that I did when I was a Kelley MBA student was definitely one of my goals was to pivot my career back to Asia, back to China specifically. So yes, this was like 17, 18 years ago. And at that time, China was was just a super fast growing economy. But one of the things I did was I wanted was a study abroad. So one of the interesting things that I'm particularly proud of, and Ben, you're smiling too because you're a part of this too, was we formed a exchange student partnership with CEIBS, China Europe International Business School, or 中欧国际. And so, in one of our KIPS trips to Shanghai, myself and Leonard Sang, another 2004 alumni, went over to the school ourselves to meet the dean over there and form the partnership. So I think the moral of that story is just like what Ray was saying is if this is what you want to do, just keep pushing at it. Find every possible way to network. Even a study abroad as an exchange student is a great way of networking. And while I was at Shanghai, I got to meet a lot of other students at CEIBS, in which I continue to keep strong networks with. And so I think the important thing is, a lot of people are going to network, a lot of people are going to throw their resumes out, and a lot of people are going to do all of those things, and those are important. But I think probably the most important is yourself, is to just keep pushing at it, keep trying, and just don't lose sight of your dream.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. Yipeng, over to you. Any advice for our students?
If I may, I think just don't overthinking, just do it. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there. I mean, international business, if that's something you're really interested in, then, there's a lot of opportunities either in the US or in Asia countries, and just explore the options, and don't just, think too much and act nothing. So I think that's it.
Brilliant. No, thanks, Yipeng. Just to add on to all of what you said, I mean, Dave, for sure. I think, first of all, if you're in IU and you're actually going through the program and you're thinking about a career in international, definitely take time to learn about the country that you want to go in. And if an opportunity comes up, or just make your opportunity to do an exchange program. That's, I think, is going to be, for me, one of the most pivotal points. But also kind of for folks who are actually saying, hey, there's a country that I want to go to, right? Learn about the language and the culture first. I think that's also very important, because then you can understand and unlock the potential that you can have in this particular part of the world. And more importantly, it's the fact that right now we are still sitting in a bit of a pandemic sometimes, and travel is restricted. But I think we're actually going to be pushing ourselves to actually think even outside the box, because what it really does is actually saying that we actually have the world at our fingertips. I think when I was graduating, from IU, similar time to Dave, this video conferencing capability was not widely available. The ability for us to actually be speaking to folks from, Bloomington to Shanghai to Zurich to Beijing was not very readily accessible. You had to plan your travels to actually go physically meet this individual. But now with this video, capabilities, we're actually still able to, can achieve a level of intimacy, right, with regards to the conversation and that personal touch that still is relevant in any business context, domestic or international. So I think for all the audiences that are actually entertaining this, right, don't regret, go for it. In the words of Yipeng, right, take a concerted approach, make your plans in the way of Ray, and actually don't be afraid to actually just get on a plane, and be able to go and live out your dreams, as what Dave is pretty much saying. And so with that said, we wanted to actually bring this panel to a close. I'm going to hand it over to Tim Smith, to maybe open it up for some Q&A. But I wanted to first thank all the panelists for all your contributions today, and hope all of what we've shared is relevant and pertinent to the audience members out there. Over to you, Tim. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Ben, and thanks to each of the panelists. Greatly appreciated your advice and thoughts shared, and reminiscing, and some stories and some great travels. And I think we're all learning much during this ongoing time of disruption. Ben, thank you for walking us through all this great thinking, and thank you again, each of you, for sharing. A few questions came in, and I'd like to get at it, as it were. One question came in, follows a little different path, looking at the environment. She says, in the first few months of the pandemic, air and water pollution, carbon emissions were noticeably reduced. Will industry and or governments try to keep the climate-related benefits post-COVID?
That's a heavy one.
That means it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm no environmental expert. I'm not. I don't think that I can speak on that dimension. But I think of it from an economic perspective, right? It is absolutely imperative that we continue to have an eye towards, really emissions-free, production, with regards to actually being environmentally safe. I think everybody at the end of the day realizes the precious nature, right, that we have all around us. And I think this period of time has allowed everybody to actually, rethink, their value proposition. I mean, I think everybody has seen those, videos or clips of like dolphins swimming in, Venice. That's never happened before, right? And I think even dolphins started swimming in the New York Harbor recently. I think something like that. And so it's really kind of put a lot of perspective with regards to that emphasis that we need to take care of the planet. There's also a great Netflix special that's coming, that's also around, and I'm not getting paid to promote this, but that Seaspiracy, I think, is actually one new show that talks about the implications of ocean health, right, as well. I think people will understand their consumption patterns impacts the world. And the thing that actually, what this is really all about to me, is that we can impact change by simply changing the behavior of the individual. And when we can do that on ourselves, we can probably, impact the change in a broader spectrum. So that's my view.
Great thoughts, Ben. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, thanks. And thank you for that question. Another question came in about, in examining the impact of the virus on the region's economy, what advice do you have for us regarding how we continue to innovate during this ongoing time of disruption? In quotes, I talk about small businesses and startups. Ray, any advice for startups and entrepreneurs and how they continue to innovate during this ongoing time of disruption?
Yeah, I think, can you guys hear me? Okay, well, I think Ben has mentioned from the offline to online, and I think this is very good for the startup, especially after the COVID. Because, for example, many shops, many restaurants were closed in the pandemic, and they lost their business. But for those companies who work from home, for those companies who work from online, and they will get benefit from this pandemic. And I think from offline to online is really a good suggestion for those startups. And yeah, and keep optimistic.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Ray. Any thoughts to share, Yipeng or David, about how do we continue to innovate during this ongoing time of disruption?
Sure, I can add to that. I mean, so in addition to live streaming and actually, bringing sales online, our company continues to actually invest during this time. For example, actually, this might be a better answer to Ben's question earlier about sustainability. Even despite all this shutdown in travel, we continue to invest. So DFS actually announced an opening. There will be opening stores in Australia, one in Brisbane and another one in Queenstown, New Zealand. So we're definitely taking advantage of this time to invest and expand our footprints to places that we believe that people will travel to again. Really exciting places like Queenstown. I've never been, and I've seen pictures, and I tell you, I can't wait to go visit it someday. And so we do continue to innovate, and we do continue to invest.
Great, thank you, David. Well, then, Yiping, we will offer you the last question and anyone else who wants to jump in here. Certainly, the pandemic has reimagined work as we know it, and we've talked about reimagining as we move forward, of course. But how might this reshaping process of work change the region's economy? Part of the beauty of the roundtable discussions when we come together within a region. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and any of you, please sharing about this reshaping of the economy as the pandemic has reimagined work for all of us.
I'll take that question. So in context of actually what we've seen with regards to working from home, right? It really suddenly unlocked the potential for physical demands, right? Of where you actually need to deliver value, because work ultimately is about delivering value. And what this period of time has actually allowed many corporations is to realize that, oh, wait a minute, I can actually deliver that value anywhere, right? And when we're looking at the individual who actually, if you think about what's been happening in the last couple hundred years, a lot of labor has been attracted to certain centers, mega cities, if you will, right? And obviously, folks who actually have been in New York, in the Silicon Valley, in let's say Shanghai, are faced with actually one of the biggest problems that we see with modern economics is the fact that the housing prices are disproportionately related to, income, okay? But imagine, I mean, as I sit here in Hong Kong, one of the most densely populated, physical places in the world, right? It suddenly potentially opens up the idea that maybe you can still deliver that value in part of maybe further out than you ever thought before, right? We've talked, we see in the news, a lot of folks are actually moving from Silicon Valley to Texas. Well, I mean, obviously there's tax implications, but more importantly, you get more, bang for your buck. You could still get more house, right? And I think that is really fundamentally reshaping, the way that we think about delivering value in the context of work. And to earlier question, I wanted to add to the innovation and just last tip is that I think it's important for everybody to understand that, if you're sitting in the business school, right, you might actually certainly be with like-minded individuals, but the innovation that can come within might be you partner with someone in the music program, right? Or you partner with someone else in the sciences to really unlock potential, because recognizing that the skill sets that you're getting trained up on is just only one dimension of the broader. And to be able to think outside the box and really truly innovate requires everybody to work with people that they're not comfortable with, right? So that you can actually get more collectively. So, answering more than what you asked for, Tim, but to two questions in one.
Oh, I'm so glad you did, Ben. Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to the final question about the reshaping and reimagining work and the impact on your region's economy?
I think it also brings opportunities. We work with a lot of developers, either in China and also in the US. Because of the pandemic, and real estate actually got hit very hard at the beginning. A lot of the retail companies we work with, and they were in big trouble. But actually, it gives our investors an opportunity to be able to buy at a very good price. So I think, both sides, good and bad.
Excellent point, Yiping. Thank you. Well, I want to share the great gratitude that all of us have for you to spend time with me this morning in your part of the world and in the evening in my part of the world. It's been an excellent discussion. I've learned very much, and I know our participants and listeners have as well. Thank you so much for your contributions to the Kelley family. We are very grateful for them. And with that, I want to wish you all a good day. And thank you all for tuning in. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.